Welcome, I'm Ben Lambert and I'll be your instructor for this course. Now this course is going to be a brief one and it's just a wrap up of the learning path, but here's what we're going to cover. First, I'll cover what to expect when taking the exam, then I'll cover some sources for additional studying, and finally I'll talk about next steps. Let's start by talking about what to expect with the exam. In order to schedule the exam, you can browse to the exam landing page and click on the Schedule Exam button. From there, you can just follow the prompts and schedule the exam for whenever works for you. Now, scheduling something online is pretty mundane. So, instead of going into detail on that, I'd like to focus on what to expect with the exam itself. The 70-534 exam, as you know, is about architecting solutions, and case studies are currently one of the most popular ways of assessing someone's abilities to architect solutions. While it's not a hard and fast rule, you can expect the exam to have a few case studies. That's 2 or 3. And a case study is going to be some information about a business case, and then there'll be some questions about that. Once you've completed the case study, that's it. You can't go back. So make sure that you take the time to make sure you're happy with the answers before moving on. The exam itself consists of 40 to 65 questions, and you're given 150 minutes. Now, that may sound like a lot of time. However, with the case studies, there'll be a lot of reading, so you really have to manage your time well. When I was preparing for the exam, I watched a video by Mark Grimes, and he had a great suggestion. Well, he had a lot of them, but one in particular stood out as quite helpful for me. He suggests that when it comes to the case studies, that you skip straight to the questions. The reason being is that if you can answer some of them without needing to look at the scenario details, then you've saved yourself some time. And then for the questions that you can't answer without the scenario, that you skim back through the scenario, but you do that with a specific purpose in mind. And that trick works well for me, and hopefully that will for you as well. In addition to the case studies, there's also some other questions about different topics. And there's a variety of different types of questions. That's not to say you'll see them all, however, you should know that different types exist. Some have one answer, some have multiple answers. Some have you ordering a list of steps to create the correct answer. And some questions will have multiple correct answers, but they're looking for the best one that meets the criteria, which means you have to read very carefully. You don't want to rush, but you also don't want to take too much time. These exams are about time management, and that's probably what makes this more of a difficult exam than some of the others. Keep in mind that you need a score of 700 out of 1,000, so every question counts. If you're not sure, do your best to eliminate as many wrong answers as possible, and then make an educated guess with the remaining choices. Here are some topics that I recommend that you review the night before the exam so that they're fresh in your mind. Take a look at the service limits and pricing tiers. That doesn't mean you need to memorize all of this. However, you should at least know the difference between the tiers as well as be able to recognize where the limits are. Read over the documentation as well for any services that you're not proficient with. Now, you should have read all this documentation before scheduling the exam so that you feel comfortable. However, I want you to brush up on the weakest areas the night before. And last, get a good night's sleep. Studies suggest that sleep improves test scores more than staying up all night studying, so make sure to get plenty of rest. Okay, I've mentioned previously in the course that no single source of information will help you pass the exam. And that's because there will be inevitably some gaps in your knowledge, and there'll also be some gaps in the learning material. So here are some additional sources of learning that I recommend. Now the first is obvious, it's the Azure documentation. I want you to consider this your canonical source for information. Now, the documentation is a bit dry, but it's very useful. I recommend reading over the docs for all of the services covered in the exam, which is a lot, however, I think it'll be worth it. The next source is the Microsoft Virtual Academy, which contains videos on a wide range of topics. So you're going to want to sift through, find the ones that are right for you, and then make sure that they're also up to date. There's some great information in these videos. Some of them are a little dated, so just make sure you're getting the right stuff. There's also Azure Friday videos, which keep you up to date on the changes happening in Azure. Make sure that you take note of the status of the different services that they cover. If something is in preview or just went to GA, then it's most likely not going to be on the exam. Another useful source for information is the Azure blog. Like the Azure Friday content, this is going to keep you up to date on changes with the platform. In addition to all of those sources, there are other courses out there from different companies which will contain plenty of great information. We all learn in different ways, so if there's courses out there that help you learn better, you should use those by all means. If you're checking out other courses, just make sure that they have been updated to reflect the changes to the exam that took place at the end of November 2016. Okay, so what's next? At the end of this learning path, there's a quiz, and the point of the quiz is to help you make sure you're ready to take the exam. Now, keep in mind, it's not the same questions on the exam. However, it's going to test your knowledge on the different topics. So if you score at least 90%, then my guess is you're probably ready to take the exam. That doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but it's probably a good indication. Now, if you're still on the fence, Microsoft offers a practice exam that costs about $100. So it's not cheap, but if it's in your budget, then it's another source that's going to help you identify areas that you could improve on. Okay, remember, this exam is not easy. If you fail the first time, don't be discouraged. If you need to reach out to myself or any of the other instructors, we're here to help you pass. So feel free to ask any questions on the community forums, and you can also reach me on Twitter via @SoWhelmed. All right, that's going to wrap up this course. Don't forget to take the quiz after this, and that's going to help you determine your next steps. Thanks a lot for watching, and good luck on the exam.